Now we're going to talk more about the parts of a project management. You have project feasibility or justification. These are inside of chapter 2. Normally there's a cost benefit analysis done at the very beginning before any project is started. You're saying these are the ideas that we think we want to get done. What are the cost of this versus what are the benefits? So if I'm going to save $500,000 and yet it's going to cost me $100,000 to say, or if it's going to cost me $1 million to save $500,000, it's not, the project will not be done because it will not be feasible, it will not be justified. But if the project is going to cost 500,000 and it's going to save $1 million within 1 to 3 years, where the return on the investment would meet at the same lifespan as the technology, then okay, that may be a benefit if it's providing enough services that the company needs. So there is a justification at first. Is this project, if we spend money on this project, will it make more money than that for the company in the long term? Then you gather user requirements as we've talked about. You design the system, which is system design. Then there's the detailed design and buy or build of the project, where you go ahead and build it, and that's what I was calling implementation. Then there's acceptance. There's from the end users, they accept it or they reject it. If they reject it, they have to tell you why. Then they have to fund the difference in many cases. And then there's the commissioning, which is what we also call go live. You turn the system on, that means it goes live. What they didn't mention in this, in the acceptance, is you always have training. It is important in the systems development lifecycle that training happens before you go live. If you wait till after go live just to save money and say training costs too much, we'll let the people figure it out, there's going to be such a steep learning curve on the new system or the new software that you're going to lose money. People will become unproductive. So it really doesn't make sense to create that learning curve situation instead of training the people on the software or on the system before it goes live. So even though the book here does not say inside of acceptance, it does not say training, training should become after implementation and before commissioning, before go live. That's just for your own benefit. Then you go back and review the project and you go through with everybody and did it accomplish what you'd set it out to do? And if it did, that's when you go back to the piece of paper you had signed on the first day saying these are the requirements, these are what the systems was going to meet. You make sure as a project manager, you made sure the system does meet those requirements and the end users did get the product they wanted. And that's when you get a sign off. The chapter goes through roles and responsibilities for different things. It goes through business innovation. Here's something about business innovation. It's important to understand that businesses do need to innovate. They need to become better, faster, smarter, cheaper to be able to stay in this global economy and global environment. But you have to be careful that you don't buy the latest technology that hasn't had the bugs worked out yet. There's leading technology and then there's called bleeding edge technology. The bleeding edge is still so far out there that the bugs have not been worked out. And so leading edge technology is good. Bleeding edge technology is very bad for a project manager. So in most cases, unless it's really, really important, you do not want to go to the bleeding edge, the latest technology that's just come out because all the problems have not been worked out with it. It's kind of like the instance with new pharmaceuticals. I don't want to be the first guy on the block to test them because of all the bad things that could happen to them. That's the bleeding edge technology. That's the latest stuff. And as a project manager, program manager, that shouldn't really happen because we talked about a few minutes ago the feasibility study or the cost benefit analysis. Usually the costs of bleeding edge technology is so high that you can't afford it and it's not worth it. For example, when the new Blu-ray players came out, they were over $1,000. Now they're down to 100, 150. So the difference is is 10 times the cost at the very beginning of the new technology versus 1/10 of it after a couple of years. So the thing is, when you're looking at a project management, it goes back into cost, time, and resources. The costs are way too high for the bleeding edge technology. So it's usually best, and I say usually because there will probably be occasions when the bleeding edge technology is necessary. Aerospace, aviation, some of these things, they're more advanced fields. Then the bleeding edge technology may be exactly what's needed to take market share and to own that market share. But in the projects that we're going to be dealing with in most of the cases throughout most of our lives, you want to stay away from bleeding edge technology. Methodology design. There are different methodologies to use. You've got the CPOC, which is the client input, process output, clients approach. That's also in the chapter. There's now project management frameworks, and again, you can read this in the book. I'm not going to read the book to you. Don't really see that as really helpful. Now, what are the best project management methodologies? The best totally depends on what you're doing and where you're doing it. What environment are you working in? What is your industry? What are you trying to accomplish? And as long as you stay within the triple constraints of time, resources, and funding, you'll be perfectly fine. So you choose the methodology or you choose the way of getting those things done that best fits your project. And one project you have will be totally different from other projects. I had 7 projects at a time normally, and one project would be as simple as updating hardware that was now 10 years old and so slow it was breaking all the time, to updating it to modern hardware, and then with one small software change so people could still do the jobs they've been doing. It wasn't to make it better, faster, and do all these things. It was just to stop it from breaking. That was a very simple project, a new piece of hardware for a server, and then loading the software onto the server, and tag, I'm done. That was a very non-complex project. So it was easy. It didn't take much time, didn't take much effort, and the risk of it becoming a problem was very, very small. The other projects that were more on a global level, that went from continent to continent, were much more complex, trying to keep the networks available so that each of the places on each of the continents were talking to each other as we were changing the software and changing the hardware environments. So that was much, much more difficult, required much more attention to detail, and had many, many more people all over the world in different time zones working on it. One thing I'd also suggest to you too about taking care of your people is we met in many, many different time zones. And by doing that, it caused people a lot of issues where one week I would meet on my time zone, another week I would meet on the Asian time zone, the next week I'd meet on the European time zone, so that no one group was made to get up at the middle of the night all the time. That all of us shared in that burden because the project went on for 2 months. So remember this, take care of your people and they'll work for you. If you don't take care of them, they might not. You won't get as good of results. So now that we've looked at chapters 1, 2, and 3, again, you can read about the different methodologies and using hybrid methodologies, which means combining aspects of different ones. You have development methodologies. How do I develop the system? Okay, well, again, it all depends on what are you trying to build. Then requirements for selecting a methodology. They go into great detail here. What's the requirement? What's the rationale behind it? Methodologies require money and effect schedule. Okay, so what have I got to get done? What's my team size? Again, we're going back to funding, time, people, and time, human resources, and funding. Implementing methodologies. Again, that is a lot easier than it looks like. They've got a pyramid that's listed here. The basis of the pyramid is actually a sound plan. And when you've got the plan documented, written down and you've got everybody's approval on it, you work towards the plan. When you see an issue arises that makes you change the plan, you go back and through transparent communication, you go back and talk with the decision makers and say, this is what we've come up with, this is what we need to change now, and see how it affects the project outcome. And again, remember, in the systems development lifecycle, there is always a time when you can say it's not going to accomplish the needs, we've spent too much money. If we continue on, we're going to spend more money and still not accomplish the needs. So there are times when you can say we must stop the project, and then that is a successful outcome. Okay, for the methodology rollout, okay, which methodology are you going to use, and then how do I use it? Chapter 7 goes into project templates and techniques. Again, the major techniques are treat your people like you want to be treated. Make sure you don't have them listed on several different line items at the very same time in your project, because even though they're very good and very talented at what they do, they can't do 3 things at one time. So that's what the project template is for. It puts everything in order as it needs to be done, where you can see if there's problems. If you see where there's going to be duplication of effort or places where the effort is not going to be met because you've got the same guy slotted, same person slotted for the same time for several days in a row. Processes and trends, considerations. What is a process? A process is best defined as who is doing what, where, when, and how much to reach a certain goal. You've got company processes, you've got controls for people and processes. Some of the processes are change control. You've got areas configuration management. The resource needed is a configuration manager. So when you change how a piece of hardware or software is implemented, that is now configuration. In engineering, it's the same thing. If you have 3 pieces that go together to make one part, then make an antenna. Well, those pieces, if you change any of those pieces, you now have to change the entire part number of that antenna because you've changed the configuration. You've got procurement, those are people that buy things. You've got the issues and risks, so you've got risk managers, and that's usually a project manager. You've got documentation control, so when you build a system, you've also got to build the manuals for people to use it. You've also got to develop the processes on how to use it. And then you have to have training. So you've got estimation, communication, recruitment, marketing, sales, framework, finance, audit, quality assurance, training, and product development, as are listed in Chapter 8. So what I'd like you to do is, again, go through each of your chapters, go through the questions at the end of the chapter, and those will prepare you for the final examination. The main things that I wanted to share with you, other than what was in the book, are the experiences that I've had and things that you should look for. And again, the triple constraints are time, resources, human resources, and funding. And also make sure you document things. Document them at the beginning. Have open communication, transparent communication. So if there's any time an issue within the project, that you notify the people of the project that own the project that there are issues and get their help to to fight off whatever the issue is. If you've got people that are being pulled away from you and used on other projects, you can contact the decision makers and say, I need your help in getting these people back. Or if not, the timeline for the project will slip and it'll slide out to the right. And if it does that, you will not get the project complete on the date that you originally wanted it complete. And make sure they understand that. If they can't help with it, then also that's when I would write a memo and say, you do understand that I've brought these things to your attention. Please sign here that you understand the outcome of this. And if they don't want to sign, don't force them, but also understand that you can write a memo and keep the date and what happened and what was said. You can keep that in a journal. And that so at the end of the project, if issues come up, you can go to your journal and say, okay, this is what happened on this date. I had a meeting with this person. This is what was discussed, and this was the outcome of the meeting. So as a project manager, the main things I can tell you are treat people like you want to be treated, document things well, and take care of your people. Do everything to your best of your ability to be transparent in your communications, to resolve issues before they become big issues. And then with that, you should be a successful project manager. I wish you all luck.